Okay, so we've got the webinar started. Welcome everyone. We're just going to allow the attendees to trickle in here and we'll be getting started in a minute.
Looking sharp, Luis, like always.
You too, James. Very good.
I put on a tie. A collared shirt this time.
I see a pin on your collar there, James.
Yeah, it's my lucky pin. I'm a big pin collector, actually. There'll be a Flora pin soon, I hope. I know somebody.
Let's do it.
Perfect. Okay, we've got the attendees studying off here. So I'm going to start by reading the forward-looking statements. So the purpose of this fireside discussion is to provide investors with an update on Flora Growth's business developments with a particular focus on Flora's international cannabis strategy. During this call, we may make statements that contain forward-looking information within the meaning of applicable securities legislation. Forward-looking information may include, but is not limited to, statement with respects to Flora's financial performance and projections, growth in revenue and earnings, and business prospects and opportunities, particularly as they relate to the company's international cannabis strategy. Forward-looking information is subject to known and unknown risks, uncertainties, and other factors that may cause actual results to be materially different from the conclusions, forecasts, or projections expressed or implied by such forward-looking information. Certain material factors and assumptions may have been applied in drawing the conclusions or making forecasts or projections reflected in such forward-looking information. A description of the factors that could affect and the assumptions underlying the company's forward-looking information can be found in Flora's public disclosure documents that are available for review under Flora's EDGAR profile on the SEC website. Participants should not place undue reliance on forward-looking information. Flora does not undertake to update any forward-looking information except in accordance with applicable securities laws. And now we'll hand it over to Luis Marchand, Flora Growth President and CEO.
Thank you, Evan, and I appreciate that introduction. Good afternoon, everyone. I really appreciate all of you taking the time to join our webinar today. This is going to be a fireside chat. We're going to keep it very informal, answer any questions that may come from the audience. So please start asking your questions early on. We're going to look through them and answer them as they come. Joining me is James Williams, our VP of Corporate Development. James, why don't you introduce yourself to the team and share a little bit of background with the audience.
Thanks, Luis. No, pleasure to be here, everyone, and thanks for joining. So for those who don't know me, my name is James Williams. I'm VP of Corp Dev and one of the founders of Cannabis Manufacturers Guild. Like many in the cannabis industry, I come from the banking world, though maybe a slightly different generation of banker. I spent the first 10 years out of school at banks like UBS and Barclays. And near the end, I was almost working exclusively with cannabis companies in the public markets at a bank with Laurentian Bank. I made the move to the corporate cannabis world despite some fairly strong beliefs that public companies in that time, around 2018-19, had some pretty lofty promises to fulfill. But I thought getting into the industry and such a nascent industry would be a great experience, and that led me to Weed MD, where I ran capital markets and business development. And working with an LP in Canada certainly gives you the tools to understand some of the flaws pervasive in the early days of cannabis in both the US and Canada. But after that, I formed Cannabis Manufacturers Guild, worked with hundreds of cannabis companies across Canada, really trying to identify excellent supply chain operators in the country who sometimes didn't have all the tools to get products to the end market. I think it was my time at CMG and attitude towards the cannabis supply chain is where Luis and I really connected. And I had the pleasure of being allowed into the Flora team. And there I'll be helping build an international CPG cannabis company focused really on discipline, profitability, and growth. So very happy to be here. And I'll pass it back to Luis for his intro.
Thank you, James. And I would say that James is one of the foremost experts in the cannabis industry worldwide. We're very lucky to count him as part of our team, and he's going to be able to educate the audience, our investor community, as he has helped develop the strategy for our company from day one. So I'll share a little bit about my background. Of course, my name is Luis Marchand. I'm President and CEO of Flora Growth Corp. I have dual citizenship, both from Colombia and the US, and that plays an important part in our strategy, as the majority of our operations are out of Colombia. My entire corporate career has been in the United States. I've been an executive for multiple retail companies, predominantly Target and Macy's. At Macy's, I was responsible for a number of roles, including sales, store management, operations. Two that I'd like to highlight for the audience today are: number one, I was responsible for the sales organization in beauty for Macy's, which was about $3.5 billion in revenue across 540 stores and about 20,000 sales colleagues working at Macy's. And the second one, I was responsible for customer experience and workforce strategy, which basically summarizes the allocation of human capital across the entire organization to ensure maximum profitability, a multi-billion-dollar payroll line, P&L line for the company. I joined Flora Growth about over a year ago officially. The company was founded in 2019. I'm going to move now into an introduction about what the company is all about. Flora Growth was founded in 2019. The company was founded under the idea of learning from the early adopters in the cannabis industry in North America, with two very clear strategic competitive advantages. The first one was to manufacture some of the best premium cannabis at the best economic structure in the world. And for that reason, we selected Colombia as our point of origin for our operations. Colombia presents a significant economic advantage in terms of cultivation for a number of reasons. The first one of it is located alongside the equator. The geography in which it's located allows for high density planting and cultivation. Our cultivation facility is located on the outskirts of Bucaramanga, 1,500 meters above sea level, with constant 3 miles per hour winds year round. It's seasonless, which obviously allows for incredible planting, which in turn has allowed us to develop one of the best economic structures in the world at 6 cents per gram of dry flower. The second one is our development of our brand and product portfolio. We have developed over 7 brands and over 280 products that are currently being distributed and generating revenue in the company. By all means, we are a brand company, and we're developing brands that resonate with consumers and consider both environmental and social impacts. And for that reason, we have been able to learn from the early adopters in the industry. James, would you like to add some commentary to that?
Yeah, I think looking back at kind of where we've developed our pattern together, I can't reinforce enough that the importance of being a strong brand leader is increasingly important in cannabis. I think looking back at the last 4 years, which I've had a lot of time to look back on, there's a pervasive idea that infrastructure means dominance. However, there's a number of companies out there who existed previously to us and who really have some ideals to be a true CPG company. Really, at the end of the day, we're building brands and we're building products that suit a consumer. And I think what really attracted me to the Flora story was the idea where Luis had a captive brand portfolio with real ambassadors and true marketed segmentation of consumers that would allow us not to just be a cannabis company, but a CPG company with cannabis growth opportunities. And I think that's really where we take our M&A strategy. And maybe I'll comment a little bit on that and kind of lead into how we view our cannabis strategy, which certainly is a segment of our overall strategy. So, to start off the bat, the cannabis industry is like no other. Despite being highly regulated, where every single country has its own different rules, and really the active ingredients to cannabis, THC, CBD, and the offshoots of that fall into hundreds of different products. But that's not really why the industry is challenging necessarily. It's challenging because it's so new. We've really not even seen a full cycle in cannabis. And as a result, there's not a lot of industry expertise who can tell you how to perfectly navigate. So when we look at our structure and strategy, we really want to take a philosophy of being very smart in how we make our bets and being very responsible with capital. I think a big problem with the industry in the past, and where a lot of investors have scrutinized the cannabis companies, is that there's been a massive deployment of billions of dollars of influx of capital. However, that was done in a very undisciplined way, and oftentimes building infrastructure where demand wasn't really there. I think now in this new era of 2021 and beyond, there actually is infrastructure on the ground, and our strategy is less pretending that we know everything about every element of the supply chain and being a vertically integrated behemoth, but it's trusting the industry and the smartest people in the industry to do what we like to say in our strategy meetings, is complete the supply chain. And what we mean by that is every single country and every single product is its own supply chain. If you launch a pre-roll in Canada, it's not the same as launching a beauty product in Colombia. So you have to be very astute in how you go to market and build small bets that actually have a pathway to returns. So that's become really our strategy. And, you know, I actually love Luis to go in a little bit more background around, you know, the original brand incubation in you know, our Flora Beauty brands and Mombe and Stardog, which don't necessarily have to focus on cannabis. They can focus on other elements of normal CPG, but where we all know growth in cannabis is going to be there for the next 10, 20, 30 years. So any comments on you know, our current product portfolio and what we're offering to consumers would be very helpful, I think.
Yes, and I think for the benefit of the investors, James, you had a couple of really great comments there. The first one with regards to financial discipline. It's important to highlight to our investors and our audience today that from day one, we have been very careful with every dollar we raise and every dollar we spend. It's highly important to us that we maintain a healthy balance sheet. Our company completed a $30 million pre-IPO equity raise last year. This year, we raised $16.6 million on our IPO, which was just completed a couple of weeks ago. Our company is now trading in NASDAQ under the ticker FLGC. And that cash positioning with minimal debt, the debt that we currently have is operational debt and is minimum, is allowing us to put ourselves in a position to grow and develop our strategy. And from the portfolio of products, which James asked me the question, going back to that initial question, Flora currently has 5 operating divisions. The first one is our cultivation facility and extraction facility. That division will come online in terms of revenue generation the second part of this year. The balance of our divisions are 4 operating divisions. Our remaining 4 operating divisions are revenue generating today, and those are Flora Beauty, which is our topical and skincare lines. We founded Flora Beauty because skincares in the cannabis space and topicals are one of the lowest entry barriers to most of the markets, international markets, and that was important to us. We founded it with a great partner in Paulina Vega, who is a Latino female entrepreneur, former Miss Universe and brand ambassador for brands such as Stack Hooter, as Adidas, Pantene, as well as she's the spokesperson for Falabella, which is a retail chain in South America, similar in structure and market cap to that of Macy's. We call it the Macy's of South America. With Paulina, we have developed 2 brands, one for the mass consumer in the US and one for the prestige consumer, 2 different types of product packaging, 2 different types of product assortment that have been launched already. The first one launched in Q4 of 2020, the second one being launched as we speak. The next division is called Casa Whole Foods, which is our food and beverage division. As James mentioned, we assess that this category is going to continue to be disrupted by the cannabis industry. And even though it has high barriers of entry, once regulation is in a better position, we'll be able to maximize the output on this brand. Flora Lab is our 4th division, which is our proprietary 16,000 square foot facility out of Bogota, Colombia. In this facility, we have the ability to manufacture multiple lines of product, wide level for brands and companies all over the world. Is GMP certified, which means we can manufacture several products that can be exported worldwide. We can manufacture cosmetics, skincare, medical devices, phytotherapeutics, and dietary supplements. And then finally, our industrial division called Hemp Textiles, which is focusing on maximizing the entire yield of the plant. When you submit the cannabis plant to an extraction process, you only utilize 20 to 40% of that plant. The balance of the plant goes to waste. And we want to make sure, as one of our core values is sustainability, that we maximize the entire yield. And there are multiple industrial uses for that considered waste today, including bioplastics, paper, building material, and of course, textiles. The first project out of this division is called Stardog Loungewear. This is a clothing line that we launched at the latter part of last year, Q4. It's expanding rapidly through e-commerce channels. We have our 4th brick and mortar location opening as we speak. We're opening our first flagship in Miami, and we're very excited about this prospects. But what you see here, James, is a wide array of industries in which we're operating, because barriers of entry for each one of those are going to be different internationally, but also because we assess that all of these industries will be disrupted by cannabis as the industry continues to go mainstream.
Yeah, and actually brings up, there's actually some good questions coming in now, and I'll do a quick promo, but the Stardog shoes are what sold me. I only joined the company for the Stardog shoes for sure. But looking at some of these questions here, talking specifically about, regions and the product lines we're looking at, I wanted to add some color around, why we're entering certain markets like the UK, Latin American countries, and certainly what styles of products we're looking at. So to add some color before I pass it to Luis for some comments, we look at the industry with the phrase, complete the supply chain. And what we mean by that is that every single product class in every single country has its own nuances that require us to navigate sometimes developed and sometimes very undeveloped supply chains. So the supply chain as we see it includes genetics, cultivation, extraction, processing, distribution, and retail. So when we enter a market with something like, Stardog, established apparel market, e-commerce is valid, we can move products cross-country fairly without ties. When you start looking at CBD and beauty, how Europe and US and APAC treat that product is very different. So we approach it as a matrix type strategy. And again, I'll reiterate, if there's any groups who say there's a blanket strategy for cannabis, be very, very skeptical. Every single market has to be treated very, very separately, and certainly a wide amount of regulatory perspective needs to come from that. But when it comes to our product lines that we're interested in, we want to develop grassroots in the majority of continents and get our at least CBD cannabis products in there first, and then evaluate where THC may come down the line. Obviously, being a NASDAQ listed company, we have to be very compliant with how we approach THC in this market, but that doesn't stop us from opening up Canada. And I bring up Canada because it's one of those markets that certainly is a lot more established, and there's actually 600 plus different supply chain partners that you can rely on to move products through. So as we place our bets, and again, we place smart bets in the right areas, we always want to have a very clear goal of actually getting a return on our dollar a lot faster than 5 years. If we can have a return and see clear insights into getting our money back or earning a profit and building a business, doing it in less than 24 months is very important. So I'll also add that markets like Europe, APAC, Brazil will increasingly become important for us, but we will objectively look at each of those markets as its own product list of portfolios and then choose the products that are most adapt for that market, and really not try to build infrastructure in areas where we think demand will come down the road. And I think that's where a lot of cannabis companies previously had gotten it wrong and overbuilding and spending capital a little bit too frivolously. So Luis, any more comments on products and how we're looking at international expansion?
Well, there's a question here that is very, very interesting. I'm gonna read it, and then you can give some commentary. I'll provide my point of view. Regarding global expansion, does Flora intend to release brands in addition to the several current brands? Will the company seek to make acquisitions that may provide an opportunity to gain market share? The answer is yes to both. There's several existing brands already, as I mentioned, more than 7. A number of them that are currently under development that will be launched in the upcoming weeks and months across those categories in the industries that we're playing. Some in new industries that have yet to be released, but clearly we are assessing every opportunity as it relates to the potential market in cannabis. In terms of our acquisition strategy, as James mentioned, we will continue to evaluate the opportunity to add value to not only the company but also the investor community. I think it's important that we also highlight, and this has been a foundational strategy from our company, not only the revenue generation is a priority for us, it's very important for us that we place emphasis on great teams. Human capital has been a foundational strategy for us, and that starts from our board of directors all the way to our agricultural skilled labor on the outskirts of Bucaramanga. And we take a very serious approach when it comes to talent. In terms of our board, we just announced the naming of Mark Mastronardi, current Chief Stores Officer at Macy's, to our board of directors. Our chairman is Bernie Wilson, a former co-chairman of PricewaterhouseCoopers in Canada. Of course, James is our VP of Corporate Development and a foremost expert in cannabis. And we're making very conscious choices when it comes to talent, especially as it relates to our acquisitions, because we not only want to ensure that our portfolio of brands is complemented, but also that the talent that comes with that acquisition is going to complement the overall human capital in our organization. James, any commentary?
Yeah, no, I'd like to echo all the points you made, and I see some CMG and Canadian related groups, and I think it's a good example. Over the last 5 years, as cannabis in the 3 Cs, which I consider Canada, Colorado, and California, really show maturity. There has been an opportunity to evaluate really the cream rising to the top. And there's certainly a number of players who exist in Canada and throughout the US who have done a fantastic job of showing how they don't follow trends and they actually buck the trend on regards to profits and profitability and how they actually look at running a real responsible business. And that's at the end of the day what true CPG and some of the big Fortune 500 companies are going to look for. Anecdotally, I fundamentally do not believe that Coca-Cola will come in and say, I'm going to buy a vertically integrated cannabis company who operates in every province or every country. However, they will look at certain lines, and if built right with the right acumen of a CPG company, and especially by led like a person like Luis, you can develop a real mature business and actually get the upside when that becomes a much more mature market. I believe we're in probably wave 5 of 9 innings. If you're a fan of baseball references. And really the last wave was really all about a big exodus of capital and really investors lighting a fire under some of these cannabis companies and trying to prove that, unfortunately losing millions of dollars a quarter isn't going to be sustainable for the long run. So I'm glad to say that we're now operating in wave 5 where we reevaluate what it really means to run an effective, profitable business, but there can't really be a lot of grandiose and ego. And what I love about the Flora story is that there's a recognition that we'll never be the best in every single part of the supply chain, and we should never pretend to. However, if we have an open arm and open partnerships and do the deals with the smartest people in the supply chain, whether it be Canada or Europe or Australia, that will make a true business. And really, Luis has done a fantastic job about building culture and building a people-first mindset as opposed to a raising capital mindset. And that's what really attracted me to this opportunity and why I'm happy to be joining the Flora forces.
Thank you, James. You're too kind. I don't think I have any commentary to add to that. Let's read the next question from Dean Pham. Will Flora provide smoking products line in the future, such as cannabis flower extraction or not? I'll start answering that question, and James, you may complement. So there's been incredible developments out of Colombia in terms of the cannabis law. The biggest change that will come in is a decree to the law, Decree 613, that will allow for the export of dry flower into countries that allow us to do so. It also allows for the manufacturing of cannabinoid-infused food and beverage products. Once that law comes into effect, which will be any week now, as it is expected, we expect to start exports of both psychoactive and non-psychoactive dry flower into those markets. It's one of the most important sources of revenue. As I've mentioned, we have a significant economic moat in our wholesale operation, as we have organic cannabis that will receive organic certification in the upcoming months. And it's built under the most robust infrastructures and under the best standard operating procedures, some of the best standard operating procedures in the industry. So the short answer to that is absolutely, we're going to join that market, and it's just a matter of when, not a matter of if.
Yeah, we actually got a question from our banking partners at MKM in regards to regulatory environments. And more specifically, there has been a wave for certain countries to adopt some protectionist type mandates, whether that be Israel and their changing of regulations around testing, or Canada really not allowing for the importation of US or other fringe countries moving THC or CBD in. And I think it's very important to our strategy. I mean, I think it reinforces the belief that you cannot have a blanket strategy and you cannot put too much capital at risk relying on regulations. You have to remain flexible. You have to remain optimistic yet pragmatic. And I think where our strategy difference, and it leans back onto our matrix strategy, is we have a number of different mandates running simultaneously, figuring out the fastest route to market, but the responsible route to market. And there's nothing to cry foul on if we are making money in a CPG shoe brand. If it's moving and it's moving well, that's fantastic. It doesn't necessarily mean we need to be a pure cannabis company. And I think that's where a lot of cannabis companies have overflexed on is the belief that flower is the answer to all their problems, which time and time again, whether it be California, Colorado, Oregon, or Canada, it's a very domesticated province by province or state by state market. And it's very, very cutthroat. However, topicals, built by strong brand foundation, built by real leaders in the industry, has the ability to move nationally. And that's where we'd rather place our bets. So I know there was a question on, are we getting into smoking flower and extracts and all these different things? And the answer is likely yes. However, we will not be building $100 million facilities to launch vape pens nationally, because largely taste attitudes towards brands, they're all very segmented, and you can't have a wide, diverse strategy around that. So we're always gonna be nimble, and we're always gonna be responsible with capital, and that should always be the driving forces to the Flora M&A strategy.
Thank you, James. I'm gonna read a question from Sabrina Gray. Do you foresee any lucrative partnerships with a coffee brand, i.e. Starbucks, to create a CBD-based coffee tea beverage? I'm going to answer that. One of our most exciting partners, her name is Laura Londoño. Laura Londoño is the co-founder of Casa Whole Foods, which is our food and beverage division. And she has a very interesting background. She is an actress. She's a businesswoman in her own right, Latino female entrepreneur, of course. And she currently is starting on one of the most successful series that has been launched, telenovelas that has been launched in Latin America in many years, called actually Café, but it's called actually Coffee. So there is a project in the works with her. There's of course a lot of positive elements about functionality, just like caffeine did for coffee, with regards to CBD and other molecules in cannabinoids. And we look forward to sharing the news on those projects in the upcoming months.
Yeah, and there's like leading on that, Gloria asked, "Are we entering the beverage market?" To which I would respond, "We're already in the beverage market. Actually, we sent our first shipments of Mambe to the UK. We are now, moving in, and not necessarily a CBD THC product, but it's certainly a playground we're very familiar with. And again, in regards to completing the supply chain, we built the backdrop and the bones necessarily to enter multiple products and categories across multiple countries. And really, it's just adding that next step, which is THC and CBD. So, of course, the beverage category will be increasingly important, but we also don't want to get ahead of our skis. I mean, looking at the US market, it only represents sub 5%. And certain markets like powders, for example, may actually be a much larger market for us in the future. So luckily, I brought a toolbox with me. We have an outstanding list of technology partners we'll be pulling on and deploying across all the major continents. And really the timing will be when we deploy them and to how much capacity we deploy them, but there's strategies across all of these different product classes and geographies, and you'll see a lot more coming very soon on how we deploy that.
Thank you, James. There's been a lot of questions, several questions around our stock and the stock market. I'd like to provide some context into that. First of all, our first milestone that we highly celebrated last Thursday when we were at the closing bell ceremony at NASDAQ was our IPO. We wanted to make sure that we went through a direct listing. There were many ways in which we could have gone into our IPO process. Our IPO was a direct listing IPO where we raised capital. We, as far as we are aware, are the first all outdoor cannabis company to do so, and that just shows that we are willing to jump all the significant barriers and obstacles to list and be public, traded publicly. That being said, our strategy is a long-term strategy. We want to make sure that we deploy that strategy of developing the best cultivation facility at the best economic structure in the world, growing our cannabis organically in Colombia with the highest levels of certification, including Global GAP. Our facilities were GMP standards to provide the highest level of quality of our products, while also developing a portfolio of brands and products. And as the weeks and months, the upcoming weeks and months come to pass, the investor community will see our strategy take hold, and we expect that we will be rewarded as such in terms of a stock price. So I think what you have seen in the stock price is something that we are not concerned with over the short term. Our priority is to execute our strategy. We have demonstrated that we can execute. Going public through a direct listing shows our resilience and our ability to execute. Developing 7 brands in an 18-month time period and launching them to market shows our ability to develop brands and taking them to market. And the team that we're building around us will ensure that we're positioning ourselves as a global leader in the cannabis industry.
Wonderful. And I'm now seeing some questions coming in. Actually, this is a great one, because I know you have a big, strong opinion on this. Corporate social responsibility and social accountability. I know, from a Colombia perspective, it'd be great to get your inputs on that, Luis. Obviously, our outdoor grow is extremely economically and culturally sensitive. But maybe you could talk a little bit more about how we treat the world and how we treat our plants.
Yeah, it's a foundation of our company. We want to make sure for a number of reasons. The first one is because it's the right thing to do. There are values that our founders, the founders of the company, wanted to embed into the company. Make sure that if we did things, we did them without harming the planet, and that we supported the communities that we serve and the communities that we work with. And the second one is because consumers are taking us in that direction. Consumers today are responsible in the products that they purchase. They want to make sure that they're sourced in the appropriate way. They want to make sure that the members of the companies, that the employees and the team members that work for those companies are being treated fairly. The standards in the cannabis industry are very elevated. For you to have a Global GAP certification, a GMP certification, you have to make sure that you not only observe certain operating procedures, but there's also a level of education and involvement with the employees that are running the operation. When it comes to our cultivation facility, that is especially important to us. We are hiring the vast majority, 95% plus, of the employees that work at our cultivation facility work in the community where we have that facility. And the reason why we did that is because we want to make sure that we support it economically, that we add jobs to the locations where we're working, and also it has in turn built goodwill towards the company in those areas that we work. This translates, as I mentioned, James, not only from the cultivation facility, it translates to sourcing, packaging, the development of our products, the ingredients that we utilize, as well as the message that we deliver to our consumers.
Wonderful. And there's actually a few, I know there's some questions in regards to float and stuff like that, and we can certainly have our investors team reach out and contact in regards to that, as it's always changing. I'd like to obviously announce that, obviously all the founders are locked up, so nothing's coming out from that side. But going back to a few other questions just on innovation and how we look at that, I'm pleased to say that, through CMG and what we've seen in Canada, we have an excellent finger on the new innovative products that are coming out of both Canada and the US, as well as international countries. I think, from a philosophy standpoint, doing things the same as everyone else is certainly not what we're interested in. I can say that we have a number of partnerships in place with some really innovative products that will not only increase consumer appreciation on quality and what we're trying to build, but also allow us to stand out and be protected in a way that we don't have to worry about everyone rushing into our space. So you'll have to stay tuned for some of these different initiatives, but innovation is very, very much at the forefront of what we believe will differentiate us in the future.
Great, James. Several questions here. We're trying to keep up and appreciate the engagement from the entire audience. This is a two-part question. I'm going to pose it to you, James. From Alexander Liska, regulation and enforcement thereof is also constantly changing, which means making smaller, thoughtful bets is even more important. For example, with CBD in California, the Department of Health has made recent announcements reminding the state adoption of federal laws, including food additives, dietary supplements, and food labeling and GMP. In essence, telegraphing the enforcement of stricter rules. Any thoughts on that statement, James, that you can give some insight into the audience?
Yeah, I mean, it touches on the broader difficulty of navigating the cannabis industry. Not only do governments put in, what they believe is their entry into the industry as becoming, whether it's Canada becoming the first truly recreational market, or whether it's new medical programs adopting, but there's constant change in that. And certainly in a democratic society where the winds can change from, whether it's 4 years or 5 or what country you live in, you have to really move with regulations. And that's why we built a fantastic regulatory team. I'll have to give props to my good friend, Jason Warnock, who's been leading that side on Rivet Advisory. But staying attuned with the changing winds is increasingly important, but also moves more into our ethos of not putting a mass amount of money on infrastructure where we can, then turn around and have to do a write down in 2 or 3 years. So, we're all for expanding our presence in multiple countries, but I think now that we're in year 5, 6 of a much more streamlined ecosystem, whether it be new countries coming online or new stopgaps allowing us into the countries, we will make smart bets and we'll use infrastructure that's largely on the ground and experts on the ground. And then once we find the best ones, they are certainly more than welcome to join the Flora team.
Yeah, and I would just add that to the comment that high barriers of entry in an industry are not a bad thing. It just means that you have to be very methodical and thoughtful about the way you execute inside the company. You have to establish very, very thorough regulatory standard operating procedures, abide by regulations, ensure that you receive all the licenses. But when you do so, you're left with fewer players in the market that can serve consumers worldwide. We believe Flora is one of those companies that is poised to take advantage of that regulatory environment, because we're doing things the right way with a very structured strategy from day one. That will allow us to ensure that we can take advantage of the global market. And as regulations vary amongst industries, we have lower barriers of entries in some categories versus others. So that allows us also to unlock some revenue potential early on that will show our long-term investors that we're taking care of revenue generation in the short term while protecting the future of the company.
That's great. So I know we're probably wrapping up. We have a few more minutes left. Is there anything else, Luis, you'd kind of like to end off on a note for our investment community and those watching the Flora story?
A number of comments. I think I want to summarize our company's story. Founded in 2019, a very healthy balance sheet, a very robust strategy, founded in 2 competitive advantages. Our economic mode in Colombia and our cost structure at 6 cents per gram of dry flower. It's an all-outdoor cultivation facility that will be able to market organic cannabis into the world. And number 2, our CPG brand portfolio of brands and products that it eclipses over the 300 number mark already, with more brands to come. And those 2 foundations, along with a great team that, of course, includes James and many other members of my team that we have not been able to highlight today, and strong financial disciplines are going to put us in a great position to be a global market leader over the long term. The second comment that I'll make is we didn't have enough time. We are going to make sure that we have regular fireside chats, very informal, to educate our investors. We want to make sure that you're knowledgeable about the Flora story, but that you also learn about the cannabis industry and about our developments. Many exciting things to come over the next weeks and months. So please stay tuned, stay connected with us. You can go to floragrowth.ca to learn about all of our brand portfolio, our latest releases, as well as our performance. But I look forward to having more candid conversations with our investor community in the upcoming months. James, any other comments?
No, I would just like to again thank you for being the fantastic leader that you are, and again, one of the most handsome guys in cannabis. So it's always a plus. And obviously, look, Evan, myself, the investor relations team is always available to answer ad hoc questions. We want to be transparent with the industry. We certainly have a lot coming out after the last 4 years, and we want to show the industry, how to run a cannabis company responsibly and ethically, and really grow this into the company it will eventually be. So thank you, Luis, and thank you to all those who participated.
I appreciate it. Evan, one last comment will be, let's make sure that we save all the questions that have yet to be answered, and we'll find a way to respond to all these questions. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you.